Good morning. This workshop or this roundtable has a history behind it and a purpose behind it. And sometime during the discussions, it's possible that some of you may wonder what the purpose is, because we are going to cover such a broad area that it may be difficult for us to come out with the kind of conclusions that we would love to have out of a academic discussion. But actually our purpose here today is not to come out with a clear set of conclusions, because the scope doesn't permit that. Our purpose here is to raise some fundamental issues, to explore a range of questions which at the bare minimum we hope will give us all a perspective about money, finance, capital, in the widest possible perspective, so that we can look for solutions to the challenges facing humanity today. This is not a course, a specialized course for financial economists or monetary economists or economists. We have a number of distinguished economists in the room from different disciplines and sub-disciplines. But we have social scientists in the room, we have engineers and mathematicians in the room, we have international civil servants in the room, and anthropologists and psychologists, and for a real reason. And that is, we think that money is so important and actually so fundamental to society that it's necessary that we understand it in its widest and deepest foundations. And just to illustrate that, I'm going to tell you a story that many of you may be familiar with, and that is 1933, when Franklin Delano Roosevelt became the president. I think it was the 33rd, but don't rely on that. President of the United States. Right in the middle of the Great Depression, 3 years after the Great Crash, when already about 6,000 banks had failed in the United States. It was rightly hailed as the most serious financial crisis the US had ever had up until that time. We hope that that remains true in future. There's differences of opinion on that. But for 3 years, the Federal Reserve and prevailing economic policy experts had applied every known remedy to try to address this issue. And the banks continued to fail. The people continued to panic. The panic spread. One bank after another failed. The American public lined up at the banks to withdraw their money. And the only thing that postponed the inevitable was the time it took for people lining up to get to the cashier's window and get cash out. And of course, even the soundest bank in the world cannot handle a panic in which all its depositors want their money back. The banking system can't work that way. That money's not in the bank, it's in circulation. The result was when FDR became president, he declared a 1-week banking holiday. And they began a set of emergency legislation, and I'm not going to go into that aspect except to mention they introduced the depositors' insurance, so a minimum, for minimum savings deposits, they were insured. But none of that by itself would have stemmed the crisis. And 5 days later, Roosevelt got on the radio for the first of his famous fireside chats, and quoted some of he's often quoted for the words he spoke at that time. And he addressed the American people and he said, look, nothing has fundamentally changed in America. We still have the rich natural resources, the vast land extent and mineral resources, energy resources. We still have a talented, highly skilled, motivated population. We still have all the factory and manufacturing power that made America the greatest manufacturing economy in the world by far at that time. So what has changed? Fundamentally, what has changed is we have lost faith in ourselves, we've lost faith in our country, we've lost confidence in the future. And that's not a very American attitude. To call an American and say you're afraid is the fastest way to evoke a response. And he said, I'm going to open the banks again next Monday morning. And I want you to go back and stand in line at the bank. But I want you to go and redeposit your money in the bank, because your faith and confidence in our country, in our economy, in our people is the only thing that has made us great. It's the fundamental thing that's made us great, and it's the only thing that can save us. And his famous words were, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. And when they opened the banks the next Monday, sure enough, the people went and lined up in long lines again, but the net result was a continuous inflow of money, and the banking crisis was stemmed. Roosevelt said at that time that nothing he had studied at Harvard in economics had prepared him for this. And nothing that they had tried in the previous 3 years had worked in addressing this. So what does this tell us? It doesn't mean that monetary policy or fiscal policy or any economic policy is irrelevant to it. It means there's something more fundamental underlining our financial system, our economic system, our monetary system, and of course our society. And I give this example because I think it's a fundamental perspective for this discussion in this 3 days. We're looking at money not just as a specialized instrument for economic transactions, for investment, for production, for livelihoods. We're looking at money as a social institution. And what do we know about social institutions? And what can we learn from other social institutions that are in some sense less esoteric than money has become in our minds? That we say it's for the experts. And by the way, even among economists, and we have a number in the room who can tell you, those who are not specialized in money and finance, and I've heard it even from very distinguished economists say, I'm not a monetary, this is not my field. That's something separate for the experts. But there's something fundamental, more fundamental, that's not restricted to the financial experts, it's not restricted to economists, it's fundamental to society. So for me, the best illustration of this is language. What is language? What gives language its tremendous power? And I think we can agree that no matter how valuable and powerful money is today, that without language, we would have no economy, we would have no society, we would have no civilization. And yet it's so intangible, it's not based on any physical reality. It's a networking tool by modern parlance. It's a social convention. It's a set of meaningless symbols unless we speak the same language and we share them. And when we share them, when that odd sound or those odd looking characters in a particular sequence and punctuation are understood, it's either deeply inspiring or deeply insulting. It motivates and moves the world today. It's language. But what's its base? Its base are not the characters and sounds. It doesn't get its power from the symbols. They're only symbols for something else. And when we realize what their symbols are, why language is so powerful, it's not powerful in an empty room. It's not powerful among animals and species who don't have the development capacity to understand it. It's powerful only among human beings. It's not powerful to us when we're alone on a desert island. It doesn't matter how much money we have. The only thing we can do is burn the currency notes for fire or use them for building or a mattress. It has no value outside of society. It has no value outside of human relations. If I have a $1,000 or €1,000 currency note here and I ask for change and I tell you, I don't need the full change, it's enough you give me 500 euros, I really need some change out of this, you'll begin to suspect Why would anybody give €1,000 currency note and accept €500? There's something suspicious about this. Maybe it's counterfeit. And in fact, try doing that and you'll find it very difficult, even if you offer a bigger reward. Because the value of that currency note is not the paper or what's printed on it, and it doesn't matter who printed it. The value of it is based on our confidence in it. And if we don't believe it's real, or we don't believe it's going to retain its value, it has no inherent intrinsic value of its own. And you can reverse the argument and say, if I'm a counterfeiter and I announce that I've got good counterfeit notes and I'm willing to sell €1,000 perfect, untraceable and counterfeit notes for €500 each, I may get a bundle. I may be making good money because it doesn't matter who printed the currency note. It matters what people believe. The power of the note comes from what people believe when it changes hands, its power for exchange. So I'm trying to use this to illustrate something fundamental, that money has social roots, human roots, psychological roots, foundations in society, and without those roots, it has no inherent power. We're looking at it on a daily basis and seeing what happens to exchange rates or interest rates or taxation rates and all. That's all up at the top, but it's the foundations that support it. And that, I hope, will help you understand some of the questions that we're raising and the agenda on this meeting. Why are we exploring so many different areas that from the day-to-day basis may appear to be unconnected, but we believe are fundamental issues in understanding money? We're not here just for an understanding of money. We're here to try to explore fundamental questions about the role of money in society. And we're going to ask you to help us identify what those questions are. Thomas will do that in a few minutes. So we're clear about our objectives. We're here to explore, how do we finance the 17 SDGs? How do we address climate change? How do we eliminate the rising inequality in society and so many other things? And we believe that the answers don't lie in some tricks of monetary policy or investment. The answers lie at a more fundamental level. So I think I would like us all to come out of this meeting, not with the final answers to these questions, because this meeting is only a step in a process. Some of you already know, and just to be sure everybody knows, the World Academy is now partnering with the United Nations on 2 projects. Thomas will tell you about one of them, which is a very interesting new project for us on the future of capital. I want to mention the other, and that is what we call global leadership in the 21st century. 1 year from now, we'll be organizing with the UN in Geneva a major international conference on how do we address the global social challenges and create solutions to them. And certainly in every area, whatever those challenges are, money is connected to them all. Money is at the root of everything, whether we need money for education or money for minimum incomes or employment or whatever, investment or change in our energy systems, investment in renewable energies, whatever it is, money is involved. So this discussion here, which is one step in a much wider discussion, is to give us some leverage to look for those points at which we can change the way money is working in society. Our work on this issue goes back, to my knowledge, back to 1999. We've had discussions and meetings on various aspects of it over the last 20 years. But now, in current circumstances, we've put it really towards the top of the agenda, and it fits in very well with the other work the Academy is doing. The format for this meeting, as we've tried to communicate to everybody in advance, is not so much for each of us to tell everyone else what we're doing or what we've thought or what we've done in the past. It's for each of us to share a set of questions and facilitate a discussion so that we're all talking on the same subject rather than each talking from a different perspective and then trying to put something together. So the format's intended, we have moderators with a few exceptions instead of speakers, because we want the moderators to stimulate our thinking and our questions rather than to give us the answers. We have three, I believe, at least three speakers who are not here, who will be making short presentations at the end of the day, today and tomorrow, because they're people with very interesting perspectives, and we thought it would stimulate the discussion to hear a few of them. But our main process is that you are invited, welcome, and encouraged to participate on all the subjects and not feel, well, that's not my expertise. Even if you're just raising a question, the questions are valuable to us.